Well, moving into our last segment of the day, we got Wonder Woman here. We got to give her a title. Peter Ducey, Philip Wegman, they all have titles, right? Them two are the gladiators. This is Wonder Woman here, man. And I call her Wonder Woman, hell, not just from her wisdom and her intellect. I mean, that is obvious. But her effort, you guys. I follow this lady on Instagram, and it is so inspiring to watch Jacqui Heinrich of Fox News work. And she does a damn good job at what she does. I mean, even the segments she puts out on Instagram, you should really go follow her. I'm dead serious. It's phenomenal, the amount of work this woman does. That's why she's Wonder Woman, folks. She does it all. It's truly a wonder how the hell we got her on the GOP side of the aisle, because damn, we need somebody like her. Again, if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button. Well, she's sitting here getting a litany of questions and basically calling out like, look, what you're saying about the HEROES Act and this emergency spending does not make any sense. She does a great job here. Let's go ahead and listen.
I have one quick one on documents that went to student loans. Understanding that you can't tell us why the FBI search at the Biden Center wasn't disclosed previously, and that Ian Sams has referred to questions about the National Archives possibly being blocked from sending a press release to DOJ. Understanding you can't talk about any of that. Can you assure us that the White House has been and continues to be as transparent as possible, meaning that where there haven't been disclosures, something has prevented that?
What I can say is what the president has said many times, and you've seen it in our statements, is that we are cooperating fully. The president and his team is cooperating fully, and we will continue to do that. And I'll just leave it there.
She's going to leave it there because Peter, I believe NBC, sitting to Jacqui Heinrich's left or to our right, questions her on this. Check out my shorts, folks. We're uploading a lot of shorts, so not everything is going to be in these full podcast episodes. Sometimes the juicy stuff's going to be in the shorts, so make sure you don't forget that, because I'm going to upload that short with Peter's question. Not Peter Ducey, but Peter Alexander.
Loans. Does the White House believe that the president or administration can continue to use emergency powers after the emergency is over?
So providing debt relief or pausing loan payments as it relates to the student loans does not require an ongoing and national emergency. And I just laid out for Karen how we see this process, and talking about the HEROES Act, which was a authority that was given to the Secretary of Education through Congress, and that's how we're moving forward there. And look, the emergency ending doesn't change the legal justification. And here's a couple of things here. There was a national emergency, as we all know, as we've all lived through it. Millions of borrowers were negatively impacted by the pandemic and face risk of default on their loans due to that emergency, that national emergency. Congress gave, again, the Secretary of Education the authority to take steps to prevent that harm, and he is. And that's how we see the process moving forward.
A quick question here. This is what really doesn't make sense to me, is that we're using the HEROES Act for emergency purposes, even though we're not in an emergency, and that Joe Biden himself said that COVID is over with, the pandemic is over, thus we're not in an emergency, but yet we're going to use this emergency authorization to release people's debt from their student loans. Why are we focusing on just student loans? Wouldn't you focus like on mortgages or business loans or something like that? I mean, it's really odd to me that you're kind of hyper focusing on student debt and you're using the HEROES Act for an emergency to relieve somebody of their loans that they probably had even before the pandemic happened. But why would you just hyper focus on loans and not, again, mortgages, auto loans? I mean, I don't know. It's just weird to me that you're just focusing on this. I get that it's one of his promises, but it just doesn't fly with me, the fact that, oh, well, we're trying to help people out and really give them a break. If you really wanted to give them a break, you'd help them more with a long-term loan, like a 30-year mortgage, than anything. And I'm not for that either. I'm not even for paying off people's student loans. Look, they take out that loan. They took on that risk themselves. They should be responsible for that risk, regardless of the emergency that happened on a national level. You're still responsible for that. Not me. I didn't choose to pay for your college. I didn't opt in for that, but that's what this administration thinks we should do. You're going to pay for some Jimmy Joe Bob's student loan that got it in lesbian dance theory or underwater basket weaving and making zero money from it, but you still have to pay off that $600,000 student loan. Goody goody.
HEROES Act, it's the portion of the HEROES Act that the Secretary is using is the part that needs a national emergency to be able to cancel that debt. So I understand what you're saying, and it was sort of explained in the background call a few weeks ago on this, where an official said that the increased authority under national emergency is necessary for the program to be created, but doesn't have to be in effect through the duration of the program. And the reason I'm asking is that interpretation could potentially allow for, policy effectuation beyond the emergency. So at what point is someone not worse off after a pandemic? How are we determining?
I mean, just getting back.
Great freaking question, and the way she even worded that, phenomenal job. I don't even know if I could word a question that well. Basically saying, like, at what point, how many years do we need to go by for somebody not to be negatively impacted from such an event like COVID or the pandemic? You could say 10 years. I mean, heck, they still are talking about the ramifications of slavery that had on black people many, many generations later, hundreds of years later. They're still talking about how those have had effects in today, or Jim Crow, or whatever it may be. So this is a great question of, like, be specific. How long does this go on for? Let's see what her response is.
Back to, I guess the crust of your question is that we don't need an emergency power to use the HEROES Act. It is an authority that was given to the Secretary of Education, and he is using that authority for a moment that we believe the American people really need it. After these last 3 years, after dealing with what many dealt with a national emergency that was to them, right? Something that
folks, and correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't your student loan debt frozen? You weren't accruing more interest on that debt during the pandemic, as far as I'm aware, or a little bit even after. They from my understanding, they did freeze the loans, right? Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that is right. So it wasn't as if you're going to be even worse off. I mean, we're talking, how long has it been since the pandemic's been over? I've been at work for like 2 years now. I mean, granted, I was working during the pandemic in the classroom, but now we're just going to be like, oh, well, we're just going to carry this on for however long, not even giving a specific answer. I hope Jacqui Heinrich calls her out on this, going like, well, how long? Like, are we going for decades here? Like, how long are you going to have this emergency authorization, of which you don't need emergency authorization, according to her, just to relieve student loans? I mean, the reason why this is an important issue is because 5 years from now, you can have some sort of knucklehead Republican or Democrat go, well, we're going to relieve loans again because the Democrats did it, so now all you get to do it. Major question here.
Was cause them harm. And so this is a way to help tens of millions of Americans who need a little extra help. And so that's what the Secretary of Education is doing.
Doesn't the HEROES Act, though, require the national emergency for the Secretary to use it? I know we're splitting hairs here, but what I'm getting at is, yes, there was a national emergency. Yes, the administration used the HEROES Act because of the national emergency to cancel student debt. And I understand that the position that the administration staked out in the DOJ brief is that it doesn't have to be in effect to do the program. But my question I'm getting at is, when do you stop being harmed by the pandemic? How are we measuring it? And
that's a good question. Look, it's not any emergency power. It is, again, something that the Secretary of Education gets to. The HEROES Act is something that is in his purview.
How long? How freaking long? She gave you the same question twice, and she fed it to you like you were a baby, Karine. Oh my God, this lady is dumb. Oh, good question. Good question. And then doesn't answer it. You guys, I'm so far past the idea of like she just dodged it. I think she's literally just dumb. I think Karine Jean-Pierre is actually dumb. I really don't think she processes these questions in the same way that everybody else does. I'm like on board that literally this diversity hire is so far gone like her boss, or that Joe Biden's dementia has rubbed off on her that she can't even listen to questions correctly and respond in the right manner. And this is the type of gibberish that we get. That's basically what's happening here. Sounds like Joe Biden.
Purview that he's able to use, an authority that he's able to use, and that's a decision that the Secretary of Education is going to make. As you remember, the debt relief was being used at the same time that we were going to lift up the pause, right, for payments, and so we believed as that was going to happen.
Okay, I was right. Yeah, payments were paused. Yeah. Okay, so Your debt wasn't increasing in some way, shape, or form from the interest, meaning you weren't actually accruing more interest on the debt because it was paused. So you're being hooked up. If anything, that was a really big benefit to you and a lot of Americans, because not every American was impacted by the pandemic in the same way that somebody else was. But that's not going to be part of the algorithm in terms of them just paying off your debt. Even if you weren't impacted, you didn't need the money, they were still going to send you a check in the same way that some of us were still working during COVID and probably didn't need a COVID stimulus check, just as myself, but we still got one anyway. So the government was just handing out freaking checks like they're hotcakes. Same thing here, but that's not going to be built into the cake. No. And how long does this go on for? As you saw, forever.
We needed to do something to help tens of millions of Americans out there. Again, this is an authority that the Secretary of Education has. It's
Overreach.
Not just any kind of emergency power. This is a power that was given to the Secretary of Education by Congress that he's using in a way to make sure that Americans out there who have been harmed get a little bit of extra relief.
Final point on it.
So she's not going to keep going because, you know, she already knows that she's digging herself a hole with Jacqui Heinrich of Fox News there, and she don't like Fox News. If you recall, even years ago, she said Fox News was a racist outlet. So it's Black History Month. God forbid you take questions from anybody that, you know, you say is a racist or whatever it may be. Great job, Jacqui, by the way, of trying to get your questions answered. And she dodged every single one for the most part. She don't have a clue, and she's going to say that's a national emergency here to be able to pay off students' freaking loans. Let that sink in, you guys. A national emergency to pay off somebody's student loans because they decided to go to college. Where does that logic stop, by the way? And when does it stop, by the way, in terms of being able to pay off somebody's debt from something that happened a long time ago? I mean, this literally can go on for another 2 years. Well, it happened 5 years ago. It happened 50 years ago. Well, it happened 100 years ago. We should still pay off their student loans. I mean, it's so idiotic. But hey, this is the line of thinking, the train of logic, the linear logic supposedly coming from the White House. But let me know what you think about all this. I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Bald Brad Show. If you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all our future content.